Friends, let me take you to a part of the world most people can barely find on a map, but where history, empire, and great power rivalry collide like tectonic plates. Georgia. A small country with ancient roots, a civilization going back 10,000 years, standing alongside Armenia and Azerbaijan in the South Caucasus. Beautiful mountains, ancient churches, deep culture, and for centuries a battlefield in the Great Game. First it was Britain versus Russia. Then for the last 30 years, it's been the United States versus Russia. And here's the truth. These aren't just neighborly disputes. These are the front lines in a strategy to encircle Russia in the Black Sea region. A plan that stretches back not just to the Cold War, but to Lord Palmerston's vision in the 1850s, refined by Zbigniew Brzezinski in the 1990s. And Georgia was a pawn in that plan. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, Washington has pushed NATO eastward. Ukraine was one pillar of that expansion, Georgia was the other. In 2004, the US helped orchestrate the Rose Revolution, removing Eduard Shevardnadze and installing a Western favorite, Mikhail Saakashvili, a man personally backed by George Soros and American money. Saakashvili was meant to be the spearhead, the guy who would push Georgia into NATO and the EU. Never mind that Georgia isn't even in Europe geographically. It sits south of the Caucasus Mountains in Asia. The geography didn't matter. The strategy did. By 2008, this game reached its breaking point. At the NATO Bucharest summit, Georgia and Ukraine were formally invited into NATO. For Saakashvili, this was the green light to move on South Ossetia, a breakaway region. He thought NATO and Washington had his back. They didn't. Russia crushed Georgia's forces in a matter of days. I remember the moment I realized just how reckless this was. It was spring 2008. Saakashvili was speaking at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York. I walked across Central Park to hear him. The man was practically vibrating with arrogance. We are part of Europe. We will join NATO. We will join the EU. We are the most European country. The crowd clapped like schoolchildren. I walked out shaking. I called my wife and said, "This guy is going to get his country destroyed." Within weeks, war broke out, and that's the deadly illusion. The idea Washington sells to small countries on Russia's border, "We've got your back." Except when the shooting starts, they don't. The South Caucasus is more than just a NATO chessboard. For centuries, this region has been the crossroads of empires. Ottoman, Persian, Russian, all contesting it long before America ever set foot here. But after 1991, the US saw it as the soft underbelly of Russia. A place for CIA meddling, a place for so-called NGOs that were really just extensions of US foreign policy. And Georgia got swept into the current. Today, Georgia's ruling party, Georgian Dream, is trying to step out of this game. They've seen what happened to Ukraine. They know the US isn't here for peace or economic growth. They're here to use Georgia as a pawn in their larger confrontation with Russia. My advice to them? Look at your map. Your real neighbors aren't Washington and Brussels, they're Russia, Turkey, and Iran. 3 historic civilizations all talking to each other right now. That's where Georgia's future lies, in regional trade, tourism, infrastructure, not in being a frontline outpost in someone else's war. But while Georgia might be trying to escape the game, Britain and the US are playing it harder than ever in Ukraine. A recent article by David Ignatius, the Washington Post's unofficial CIA mouthpiece, revealed something chilling. He wrote, as if it were perfectly normal, that Britain is egging Ukraine on to conduct dirty wars inside Russia. Assassination, sabotage, terrorism. No outrage, no debate, just the casual normalization of a strategy that could push us straight into nuclear war. This is MI6 and CIA business as usual. And it's not new. Britain has been obsessed with weakening Russia since the 1840s. They fought the Crimean War with flimsy pretexts, besieged Sevastopol to kick Russia out of the Black Sea, and dreamed of blocking Russian influence in the Middle East. The Cold War didn't end that obsession. The collapse of the Soviet Union didn't either. Brzezinski's grand chessboard in 1997 openly fantasized about breaking Russia into 3 smaller states. Today, Ukraine is the pawn. Zelensky's regime, running under martial law, postponing elections, doesn't represent the Ukrainian people. It's a clique, sending young men to die for a war that could have been avoided with one simple word: neutrality. And yet in Washington, voices like Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, and Richard Blumenthal repeat the same mantra: Putin must not win. They ignore the fact that neutrality for Ukraine isn't surrender, it's sanity. History has a warning for us. In October 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Fidel Castro urged the Soviet Union to launch a nuclear strike. Khrushchev was so horrified by the recklessness of his own ally that he immediately sought a deal with Kennedy to end the crisis. Zelensky's attack on Russia's strategic bombers, an operation almost certainly aided by MI6 and possibly the CIA, is today's Cuban moment. It should be the wake-up call that forces Washington and Moscow to say, enough, this ends now. Donald Trump, whatever you think of him, seems to understand one key point. NATO expansion into Ukraine was a mistake. This is Obama's war, Biden's war. America doesn't need it. If Trump has the political will, he could end it. How? By cutting off weapons and intelligence to Ukraine, telling the Europeans they can't fight this war without US support, and sitting down directly with Russia to guarantee NATO won't expand further. It's that simple, and that hard. Because the neocon establishment in both parties will fight it every step of the way. And here's the bigger truth. Whether we're talking about Georgia, Ukraine, or the South Caucasus, the pattern is the same. The West dangles promises of protection and prosperity, local leaders take the bait, and when the guns start firing, those promises vanish. Ordinary people are left with ruined cities, lost lives, and broken futures. So what can you do? Wherever you are, tell your leaders, stop the warmongering. Call your Russian counterparts, talk peace. Because this isn't just about Georgia or Ukraine anymore. If this spiral continues, if Britain and the US keep pushing dirty wars, if Israel bombs Iran, then we're not talking about regional conflicts anymore. We're talking about the first steps into World War III, and once we take those steps, there's no going back. So, my friend, that's your cosmic weather report for the days ahead. If this resonated with you, if it gave you clarity, or even just a smile, then don't let it be the last time we meet under the stars. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so the next time the planets have something important to say, you'll be the first to hear it. Until then, keep looking up, because the universe is always talking, if you're willing to listen.